chose to work with the government and make the government delivery system of early childhood education better. Today in India, almost 75% households have access to a smartphone. So we wanted to capitalize on that technology. हमने आंगनवाड़ीज जो कि डे केयर सेंटर्स होते हैं एंड पेरेंट्स इनकी डिजिटल कम्युनिटीज़ बनाई व्हाट्सएप के माध्यम से, जहाँ पे उनको रोज़ कंटेंट आता है जो वो बच्चों के साथ कर सकते हैं. And that was the input that we were trying to do. Today, as part of the rocket learning model, जो मैं 50% बच्चे school ready होते हैं, that number grows to around 70% after the rocket learning intervention, and that's the impact that we were chasing. Before rocket learning, I had a very comfortable job at Boston Consulting Group. I was working in Indonesia. I had a high salary, all the perks of the corporate life. But that was not enough for me. I was basically making rich people richer and wanted to do something more worthy with my life. I started rocket learning with the aim of making sure that every child in India reaches their fullest potential. I, along with my co-founders today, serve around 35 lakh children across India. And that's something that is worthwhile of our careers, and that's what we wanted to make of our careers as we progressed. I had the privilege of going to educational institutions like IIT Delhi and IIM Calcutta, and I wanted to use that privilege towards a worthy goal of society, and that's why we all started rocket learning. Hello, I'm Siddhant. I hail from a town called Indore in India, which is in the central state of Madhya Pradesh. I belong to a middle-class family where my mother and father both run sort of our first-generation entrepreneurs. My mother runs a small, affordable private school in our home. My father has a business in plastics, and I belong to a middle-class family where education is placed as the utmost lever of economic mobility. पढ़ाई करोगे तो आगे बढ़ोगे, पढ़ाई करके ही आगे बढ़ सकते हो. Education is the only path towards education mobility, and that is a belief that is instilled in me from the very start of my of my memories in that sense. I went to a very good school. I passed JEE to get into IIT Delhi. I passed CAT to get into IIM Calcutta. I was able to go to these stellar education institutions because my family, my teachers, my community was behind me. And this sort of belief I also was able to see in my corporate career. When I was at the Boston Consulting Group, I worked in India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. Everywhere I went, everyone kept education as the first thing. जब भी आप किसी नए पर्सन से मिलेंगे, वो आपको अपनी एजुकेशन सेकंड या थर्ड सेंटेंस में बता देंगे. And that's what cemented the belief that education is the biggest equalizer in any society. Unfortunately, we don't have a society which is equal. My mother actually runs an affordable private school for low-income communities in Indore. It's a very cheap school, but it's a very high-quality school. I always wondered how to build a financially sound but high-quality educational system. And that's the first thought that was seeded in my mind as I kept going through my own education, my own corporate life. When I started rocket learning, along with my co-founders, there are 5 of us, we chose to work with the government and make the government delivery system of early childhood education better. तो हम चाहते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट जो कि ऑलरेडी एक लार्ज एग्जिस्टिंग सिस्टम है, उसी के साथ पार्टनर करके आप कैसे वो हाई क्वालिटी एजुकेशन डिलीवर कर सकते हैं टू लैक्स ऑफ चिल्ड्रन हु डिजर्व इट बट आर प्रोबेबली नॉट गेटिंग इट टुडे. उसके बाद जो मेरे को करना था, दैट लेड फ्रॉम अ लॉट ऑफ रिसर्च, फ्रॉम टॉकिंग टू अ लॉट ऑफ माई मेंटर्स, माई सीनियर्स, and getting to a point where I identified कि हाँ, early childhood development is the theme that I want to work. This is the way I want to work, and this is what I want to do. Along with my co-founders, I started rocket learning after 5 years of a corporate career. And of course, family support makes a big difference in making this decision, because your family, especially your parents and your partner, in my case my wife, are incredibly supportive of my decision, not at the time of making the decision, but at all times. We started working with 50,000 children in our year 1. We scaled it up to around 1 million children at the end of year 2. And this growth was possible largely because we had 5 people who could take up a lot of scope. And ये भी बहुत ज़रूरी है क्योंकि you need partners, not just thought partners, but actually operating partners. कि हाँ, if 2 states are saying yes, do you actually have the capacity to say yes and support both of them? And we were able to make that happen, and that gave us a very good foundation in starting rocket learning. Some of the early discussions were around problem solve. कैसे करेंगे? How much technology to use? What technology to use? Whether technology is the right way to reach our communities? What is the right theory of change? By theory of change, I mean क्या करने से, क्या input करने से क्या output आएगा? and क्या outcome आएगा. Finally, we were all clear that we want to impact children's learning outcomes. बच्चे क्या सीखते हैं on literacy, on numeracy, on cognitive function, on basic executive function, which is problem solving. बच्चे ये सीखें और ये better सीखें. That was the outcome that we were all chasing. Today in India, only 50% of children in grade 1 are able to understand the basic literacy and numeracy that is expected of them. So only 50% of children are school ready today. This is the metric that we wanted to move. That is the outcome. Then the inputs. There were various options. You can send 10,000 people on the field today and try to train children. That's a cost intensive way to do it. We wanted to build something that was cost efficient. So we realized that we wanted to use technology. In the 2 or 3 years from 2018 to 2021, smartphone penetration in India rose by 30% to almost 75% at a household level. Today in India, almost 75% households have access to a smartphone. So we wanted to capitalize on that technology. So we basically digitized existing communities. हमने आंगनवाड़ीज जो कि डे केयर सेंटर्स होते हैं एंड पेरेंट्स इनकी डिजिटल कम्युनिटीज़ बनाई व्हाट्सएप के माध्यम से, जहाँ पे उनको रोज़ कंटेंट आता है जो वो बच्चों के साथ कर सकते हैं. एंड दैट वाज द इनपुट दैट वी वर ट्राइंग टू डू. सो इनपुट्स वर ट्राइंग टू इन्फ्लुएंस की क्लासरूम यानी आंगनवाड़ी में क्या हो रहा है एंड घर पे यानी पेरेंट्स के साथ क्या हो रहा है. एंड बोथ ऑफ दीज लीड टू द आउटकम ऑफ चिल्ड्रन लर्निंग बेटर. टुडे एज पार्ट ऑफ द रॉकेट लर्निंग मॉडल जो मैं 50% बच्चे स्कूल रेडी होते हैं जो मैं फैक्ट बता रहा था, दैट नंबर ग्रोज टू अराउंड 70% after the rocket learning intervention, and that's the impact that we were chasing. We were thinking about how to engage parents in the child's learning journey. As a lot of you would relate, parents are our first educators. A lot of our parents are involved in our education when we are 3 years or 4 years or 5 years old, right? But a lot of rural families or parents don't know how to engage with the children. There isn't enough knowledge in the ecosystem around बच्चों के साथ which activities are the right ones to do at the right age. And that's what we wanted to change. We wanted to build a habit in parents to spend 30 minutes every day with their child in constructive early childhood development activities. They are mostly play-based activities which any parent, regardless of where they come from or what toys or infrastructure that they have, can do. Now, how to make that happen is the main thing. Now, parents are in rural India are spread out. If you take a tier 2 or tier 3 town, it's impossible to reach out to parents directly. So you can't have a B2C startup. जैसे मतलब a lot of edtech companies tried the B2C route and it was very difficult. So we wanted to have a B2B2C route. Now, what is the B in the middle, right? And what is the effective B in the middle? You can open a company and you can try to sell to schools. Or you can open a company and try to partner with the government who actually runs आंगनवाड़ी centers जहाँ पे सबसे ज़्यादा बच्चे already आ रहे हैं. So our route was B2G2C, where we went via the government. The government is the face of the program, and we are supporting the government in that program as technology and content partners. This entire thought was happening, and then pandemic happened. So it was a huge challenge because we had to pivot कि क्या करना है. We were thinking of doing some digital things, some in-person things. In-person things went out the window. We had to pivot to completely digital things. But thankfully, digital really resonated during the pandemic because there was no learning happening. So a lot of parents actually grasped at the content that we were giving, and we saw huge adoption in our early pilots. Here the Anganwadi was adding a parent to a WhatsApp group and was saying कि activity करनी है. But it was an official school group. It was a community जो already exist करती थी. So we were digitizing an existing community. So पेरेंट्स और आंगनवाड़ी एक दूसरे को ऑलरेडी जानते थे, उन्हीं का एक व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप बन रहा था एंड उस पर एक्टिविटीज आ रही थी फॉर द पेरेंट्स टू डू. नाउ हाउ डू यू मोटिवेट देम? वी हैव दिस फ्रेमवर्क कॉल्ड एम, जिसको हम बोलते हैं एस्पिरेशन, इंफॉर्मेशन एंड मोटिवेशन. सो फर्स्ट इज टू बिल्ड एस्पिरेशन. फर्स्ट की पेरेंट्स को समझाना है कि ये क्यों ज़रूरी है, क्यों 3 से 6 साल के बच्चों के साथ आज समय बिताना ज़रूरी है. दीज इंक्लूड सॉर्ट ऑफ बिहेवियर चेंज कैंपेन्स where we try and convince the parent that this is the right age to invest in the child's education. I is information कि अगर मैं एज अ पेरेंट मैं मोटिवेटेड हूँ, अब मैं क्या करूँ बच्चों के साथ, राइट? इफ आई हैव 30 minutes टुडे, व्हाट डू आई डू विद द चाइल्ड? देन वी सेंड डेली एक्टिविटीज ऑन दीज व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप्स. दिस वाज completely automated. We built an entire technology and product team behind it which built this, and every day you get 2 activities and this is what you can do with your child. And then you are asked to send it back on the group because it should not be a black box. Your Anganwadi should actually get to know कि आपने करा कि नहीं. And once you do it, you get motivation. Of course, during the pandemic, this digital thing sort of went up a lot and digital adoption went through the roof, right? But as the pandemic sort of died down, we had to also see how we can start influencing the Anganwadis. So one of the very good aha moments for Rocket Learning was जो हम parents को content भेज रहे थे, जैसे जैसे Anganwadis खुली, Anganwadi started using that content inside the Anganwadi also. So that sparked the idea that why don't we support Anganwadis as well. So we now work with Anganwadis also deeply, that classroom के अंदर वो क्या करा सकती हैं, which is linked to the state curriculum, the national curriculum, documents which we have helped curate. एंड उनको भी गाइडेंस जाता है कि रोज क्लासरूम में क्या करें, पेरेंट्स को गाइडेंस जाता है कि वो क्या करें, एंड दिस एंटायर मॉडल वर्क्स टुगेदर टू मेक श्योर दैट द चाइल्ड गेट्स द बेस्ट लर्निंग जर्नी पॉसिबल. Are we there yet? There's still some ways to go because adoption of edtech platforms at scale is very difficult. And now we are working with around 35 lakh children across the country. We've tried it in around 10 states. We are working in around 150 districts. This entire thing has been in partnership with the government. So the government has been huge partners of this. Wherever you go at the district or state level, we partner with the local ICDS, Integrated Child Development Services. उनकी स्कीम के अंतर्गत ये प्रोग्राम को लॉन्च किया जाता है. इनफैक्ट जब हम पेरेंट्स को सर्वे करते हैं, वन ऑफ द अगेन बिगेस्ट आहाज फॉर मी वाज 50% पेरेंट्स को ये लगता है कि जो ऑटोमेटेड कंटेंट व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप पे आता है वो एक्चुअली उनकी आंगनवाड़ी टीचर भेजती हैं. दैट इज wonderful because it shows कि technology can be interpreted in a positive way. You don't necessarily need to tell the parent कि automated आ रहा है, ये मतलब कोई technology पीछे code run हो रहा है. They perceive it as coming from the Anganwadi worker, which is a huge win for us because it empowers the Anganwadi. It gives more respect to the Anganwadi. This raises the perception and the profile of the Anganwadi as well, which is also an aim at Rocket Learning because conventionally, Anganwadis have been seen as these Dalia centers and nutrition related centers, and we want to change that branding from only nutrition to nutrition and education. In fact, the National Women and Child Development Ministry launched a scheme called Poshan Bhi Padhai Bhi, and we are partners with them, where this is a huge training program for all Anganwadis in India around nutrition as well as education. These are the changes that we want to see in the national policy narrative. There were a lot of challenges when impact was being measured. There were a lot of challenges because we didn't know what was working. We still don't know a lot of answers because behavior change is a complicated problem. There are parents जो videos देखते हैं but वापस नहीं भेजते. We are still trying to find out what is the behavior change campaign that can convert them. We are trying to find out what motivates Anganwadis. There are some Anganwadis who are very motivated. There are some Anganwadis who are not so motivated. So we are trying to figure out how technology and in-person ka balance can actually move behavior change in this entire ecosystem. And the biggest behavior change for us is also governments, because if these programs take more and more notice, then the government के लिए priority में आ जाता है कि early childhood को भी देखना है. And the global aim for us is that early childhood development becomes the top investment from a human capital investment perspective. And that's what we are trying to chase in India and the global south. Today at Rocket, none of the decisions on creative design are taken by the team. They are taken by the users. So we leverage on the fact that WhatsApp as a UI or a front end, they are already comfortable with. Now, how do we make content which can reach them on these WhatsApp groups? And the WhatsApp group also has to be an official group. So the Anganwadi adds the parent to an official Anganwadi group. So वहाँ पे spam, good morning, good evening messages नहीं आते because you know it's an official group. The Anganwadis are also part of an official WhatsApp group where their supervisor is there. Again, the supervisor being there is really important because that makes it an official education group. And here, official education related discussions and topics are held. And therefore, the activities that we send and the responses that we get are to a large extent related to the content that we wanted. In fact, कई बार आंगनवाड़ीज उस ग्रुप को अपने और एजुकेशन के लिए एक्टिविटीज ऐड करने के लिए भी यूज कर लेती हैं, which is really good because it cements the communication of that group as an official Anganwadi group. And this basically is the concept of digitizing existing communities via low-tech apps. But this entire thing is possible because we understood that at the macro level, smartphone penetration and internet connectivity are being solved for. These are not problems that I need to solve for. Thankfully, the Reliance, Airtels of the world have already solved for internet connectivity, and hopefully smartphone penetration will automatically keep rising to like 90% and beyond as well. And we want to capitalize on this to make sure that we are reaching the right access point. बच्चों के आसपास जो parents हैं, which is the biggest access point, and आंगनवाड़ीज हैं, these two access points we are now able to reach via smartly placed low-tech apps. This also doesn't mean that I need to train Anganwadis and parents necessarily from start. I still need to train them on basic things around WhatsApp. but that is possible. That we have identified as what are the gaps where they are struggling. We have digital literacy content as well, which teaches them, Anganwadis and parents, on what to do better. We in fact have a whole team which only does calling to parents and Anganwadis who don't react on these groups. So we have curated a whole ecosystem around the slow tech apps which are already there in the household or the classroom, and we are leveraging them to reach the child in a sensible, smart way. And so that's how we have used sort of tech to reach out to the poor, underserved communities, but who have access to technology and enough access to the app that we want, which is WhatsApp in our case, and they can use that to make sure that the children are learning better. I think Rocket Learning has achieved fantastic scale. We currently work with around 35 lakh children across 10 states in India. That is around 150 districts. We have a model which is tested and externally validated, which is a huge achievement in the short span of 5 years. There are very few social impact firms in India or even globally who have tested approaches at this age in their sort of growth. The other sort of type of achievements are, we have been fortunate to have supporters and partners profile us, where Rocket Learning is a case study in Harvard Business School. It's being taught in multiple business schools as a case study of impact at scale. We have been profiled by World Economic Forum. We've been profiled. We've become partners of the National Women and Child Development Ministry, which is a big achievement in itself. We were instrumental in making sure that Poshan Bhi Padhai Bhi, which is a huge budgetary allocation from the National Ministry, actually rolls out to all the states and all the districts of the country. So we've been fortunate to be sort of the anchors of early childhood development inside the Indian ecosystem, and we are now hoping that the global south also takes notice and more investment flows into the sector. At a personal level, I think more than anything, it's about the impact that we are seeing on the children's outcomes. So I think that is what I consider as an achievement, that we set out with a certain goal and we are now hopefully closer towards that goal. In fact, हमने 3 से 6 साल के बच्चों के साथ start किया था. Now we are working with 0 to 3-year-old children as well and trying to see how we can influence that. So from 0 to 6, we want to cover the entire spectrum. I have been fortunate to be profiled in some of the awards and recognitions like Forbes 30 under 30 for my social impact contributions, the Business World sort of awards for social impact, as well as the GLG Social Fellowship. But again, I credit these more towards Rocket Learning and the work that we are doing. And it's been our thought that there is hopefully enough glory and credit to go around. In fact, as co-founders, we make sure that we are all representing Rocket Learning and the work that we do equally. Right, it's not one person taking the show or vying for the limelight. And I think as we grow big, we realize there is enough and more glory and recognition to go around, right? So both I personally and Rocket Learning have grown over the last 5 years. We actually compare ourselves with the children that we serve. Similar to the children who are at 4 or 5 or 6, there are millions of neural connections which are happening. In fact, 85% of the brain's development happens by the age of 6. And we are hoping that all the learning that we have to do as a company happens by that same age, so that we are now able to scale up the model. Over the next 5 years, we want to become the largest sort of NGO in this space or even across spaces in India, and try to influence policy not just at the national level but at the global level. And that's a big goal that we have set out for. Hopefully, we are a little bit closer to that goal. And of course, Rocket Learning having fantastic partners both at India and abroad has helped get us the recognition or the glory that is associated with the work. But that is all towards the end of making sure that our children learn better, a whole generation in India learns better, and hopefully that shows up in learning outcomes, IQ levels, and success of this entire generation over the next few years. Today, we don't control who gets born into a rich family or a poor family, and it can't be that all the rich kids are the smart ones, right? Which is what we often end up hearing. A lot of rich parents I heard in my childhood were like, my child is the smartest, right? But that holds a lot of reason, because you don't get the right opportunities at the right time if you belong to a low income community or a low income family. And we want to change that. The national education policy calls early childhood education the great equalizer. And we at Rocket Learning believe that if a child is given the right nutrition, early stimulation, and high quality early childhood education at that age, they will be set up for success. A whole generation of India can be smarter by a few IQ points or by learning outcomes if they are set up well for success. And that can hold huge potential, not just in the GDP of the country, but also in terms of other parameters like crime, like female labor force participation. We work a lot with Anganwadis, where female labor force participation is a big theme, not just for having preschools and Anganwadis, but also for having sort of children in daycare centers, so that mothers and the female labor force is actually empowered to go into the economy. So early childhood education has huge benefits, not just in GDP, but also in female labor force participation and other very important economic metrics for the society. And that's why we at Rocket Learning believe that every child at the age of 6 should be school and life ready. I'm speaking from the podium of Josh Talks, and I really want to make sure that all the audience who's listening to this doesn't just walk away with what we are doing at Rocket Learning. That in itself is an exciting story, but also walks away with the fact that there are meaningful, exciting problems to solve in the impact space, and that there are careers if you go looking for them. Unfortunately, the non-for-profit sector has its own notions and images associated with it. It is not true. We run an EdTech NGO which is very close to running a for-profit company. And we have meaningful career paths for anyone who is motivated and interested. And these problems are the actual, real, exciting, stimulating problems out there in the ecosystem. So I could sell this all day, but I would say that there are meaningful careers in the impact sector. Even if it's not a career, just visit the nearby Anganwadi, see how preschool education is happening in India, and come back with some ideas and inspiration which you can link to the people who are doing work in that sector. That would be my message, and would really sort of appreciate if all of us together think about early childhood development as the biggest investment in human capital that we can make in our economy today.